Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm really excited to be doing a first impression swatches and tutorial on the brand new Patrick Ta eyeshadow palette. This just released today. I actually just got back from Sephora. I went ahead and grabbed this in store just so I could get this video up for you guys, as well as one of the new eyeliners. So we're gonna play around, swatch the products, do an eye look, see how they perform. I'll give you my first impression if I think this is worth the money or not, and we'll see what we think. So if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe, and let's go ahead and begin. Before we get into the eye look, I want to talk a little bit about the product, the price, everything like that. So this is called the Major Dimension Eyeshadow Palette. It's available at Sephora, in-store, and online. I will link it down below. It is $68, so it's a bit pricier than a lot of palettes at Sephora. It's kind of on the higher end. I have to say I love Patrick Ta products, so I have really high hopes for this. The packaging has that rose gold packaging that you see in most of his products. This palette is described as a versatile eyeshadow palette that contains 2 luminous cream bases, velvety matte and iridescent metallic shadows, and glistening pearl toppers. So it looks like there's going to be 4 different finishes in this palette. In terms of the actual palette packaging, you can see here it's that reflective rose gold mirrored effect, just the same packaging as his blush duos and bronzer duos, but in a larger component. Here is what the inside of the palette looks like. So you do get a mirror in here, and there are 12 shades. You do have the 2 cream bases down here. They do have a plastic flap to cover it, very similar to what Natasha Denona does with her cream products. And then you have the mattes, the metallics, and the iridescent toppers. So let's go ahead and swatch this. So I'm gonna start off here. These are the 2 cream bases, very pigmented. Next is the top row, which you can see has an array of different textures like metallic, also those toppers, and then 1 matte with some glitter in it. And then the bottom row, which is all mattes with 1 matte with a little bit of glitter in it, but these swatched incredibly. Along with the eyeshadow palette, he released a new eyeliner. So this is called the Major Dimension Precision Gel Eyeliner. It retails for $26, and there's 4 different shades: black, cream, rich brown, and deep bronze. I picked up rich brown. I just feel like that's the one that I will use the most. So the packaging is very similar to his lip liners, but the tip is actually just a roll up and down, so it doesn't have that click up that his lip liners have. Let me go ahead and swatch it. It swatches very creamy. It doesn't tug at all, so I'm interested to try this out. So now that we've talked about the products, I will link them all down below, but let's zoom in and start on an eye look. I went ahead and zoomed you in, and I'm gonna start off with this shade right here. It's a really light, looks like a neutral tan shade. So when I do press my brush in, there's a little bit of kick up in the pan, just something to note, and I'm really gonna lightly put this in my crease. Okay, wow, pigmented, but a very nice pigment. Very soft and light. The mattes, I have to say, swatched beautifully. Just one swipe, heavy pigment, very thin formula, not chunky. So I'm just gonna use this as a transition. It seemed a little bit light in the pan. I didn't know if it would show up, but it definitely is. So I'm just going to lay this down just to make sure everything else blends. And I'm really interested to try out those cream bases, although I am nervous, just because it says on his website you can like layer all of it together. So I'm like, okay. I know with his blushes, you can do the powder first and then the cream, so maybe it's a similar concept. Okay, so far so good. That blended really nicely. Very light, no fallout, very thin texture, but pigmented and creamy. So now I wanna go into the base. I'm gonna go into the deeper one here. I'm gonna do a halo type eye. I'm a little bit nervous because I don't know how these will set down. I'm gonna keep this low, right in the inner corner of my eye. Very pigmented. I just wonder how these will work under or over other shadows. I even thought about using it as like a winged liner, but I just feel like the possibilities are probably endless. You can do whatever you want. So I'm going to also put some on the outer corner here. And then again, just using this brush just to diffuse it a little bit. I am just curious how this is gonna work out with other shadows on top. And in terms of texture on this, it's a drier texture, very similar to his blushes if you've ever felt them. They're not creamy emollient until you really work your finger in. So they're not messy or smudging all over. It's a little bit of a stiffer formula. Now that I have that down, I wanna go into this shade right here, which looks almost like a warm, deep brown. It sort of has a little bit of that like red undertone. And I want to pack it on top, but also blend these edges here. So sort of packing it on top to set. And then I'm going to diffuse the edges. So to further diffuse this, I'm gonna go into this mid-tone sort of tan shade. Just see if I can soften these edges here. I'm using the first brush I used. One thing I'm noticing is I feel like these do apply a little bit deeper on the eyes than they appear in the pan, which is really nice. You're gonna get a lot of richness out of this. I feel like any skin tone could use this too. There's not a black in there, so just keep that in mind. There's not a black, but these tones are deep and they're really rich. So if you look at the pan and you're like, oh, it might be a little too light for me, they do apply a little bit richer on the eyes than they look in the pan. I feel like everything is blending really nicely. I'm just using this to make sure I don't have any harsh edges here. And then I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing on the inner corner. And I'm even gonna take it one step further and just use the shade next to it. This one is a matte, but it has a little bit of shimmer in there. It appears a little bit lighter. This one's definitely more powdery in the pan. Sometimes shades with a little bit of glitter in them, like a matte shade with a little bit of glitter, really are easier to work with in terms of blending. So I'm just gonna use this very lightly just to buff over all the edges here. And you can't end up seeing the glitter, especially when you're just using it how I am, so it's not like chunky glitter is gonna be all over. Another thing I'm noticing is I don't see any fallout. If there's any, it's very minimal. I think probably using that cream base to grab on is really helping. So next I wanna go in on the lid, and I think I'm gonna use one of the iridescent toppers. I really think I'm gonna go into this shade right here. It looks like a peachy sort of nude shade, and I'm gonna use my finger. Now these are very soft when you touch them. They're not hard pressed at all, but they look a little bit chunky, but because they're a topper, that's pretty typical. And it's kind of one of those things that you wanna roll over the eye. So you can really, like, look at that. Woo, okay. So I am going to pat this in. This is dry, by the way. I'm gonna bring it up. Wow, okay. Bring it up pretty high here. Okay, that's beautiful. I swear his brand is just like one of my favorites. His makeup looks and his products. It's interesting. They're a little bit different, but they're still user-friendly for the everyday consumer. I am by no means a makeup artist. So using the cream and all these different textures was a little intimidating, but using them, I'm having zero issues. Look how beautiful that is. I have to say I'm absolutely in love with this. Spoiler alert, it looks so beautiful. I wanna take it a step further, and I'm gonna go in up here to the lightest topper shade, which is like an icy white, to see if we can make it pop even more. So this is the same texture as the one I just used, but it is icier. Popping this up high. I am loving how this is looking. I'm gonna quickly go off camera and do a winged liner with a brown liner and also throw on some lashes, and then we will finish off the lower lash line. All right, so I quickly did a really small winged liner about halfway in. I used the KVD Mad Max Brown, and then I put some half lashes on. I'm not sure which lashes they are because I reuse them and I just store them. Actually, if you guys wanna see, if you're new to my channel, this is where I store my lashes. And I have two of these full. So unfortunately, I don't know what style it is, just because I put them in here. And the reason I don't keep the boxes is because typically when I take my lashes off, like I will take them off in the car, on my couch, in my bed. So I don't like, you know, come up here and put them back in their box. I'm not that organized, but I don't know exactly what these are, but just half lashes will do. I'm just letting the glue dry now. And while the glue is drying, I want to start on the lower lash line and finish off this look, but I have to say I'm loving it. It's so pretty. So I want to go in on the lower lash line, and I'm going to start with this mid-tone shade again and just sweep this pretty much all on my lower lash line. Next, to deepen this up, I'm going to go into the deepest matte here and use that smaller brush. And I'm going to start smoking out. I really don't prefer a really intense lower lash line on myself personally, unless I'm doing like a really deep smoky eye. But for every day, I tend to not really do much on my lower lash line, but I really want to try this palette out and use every shade that I can. So I have a minimal fallout here, but again, I just wipe it away. I am so impressed with this palette. So I'm keeping most of the deepness on the outer corner here, and then I'm just sweeping in. Next, I definitely want to try out this eyeliner. So as I said, there was 4 different shades. I picked up Rich Brown just because I tend to prefer brown to black nowadays. It has a typical just twist up. So I'm going to use this to tight line up here. Feels very creamy. So just using it to tight line, and then I'm going to also put it in my waterline and we'll see. Okay, it's really creamy. It's not like hurting my eye at all. Or I don't feel like I'm tugging. Okay, so I'm going back in just to really intensify so that there's no line. I always feel like I have a line from where I put liner on the inside of my, you know, inner rim to my lash line. I don't know if it's because I'm blonde, but I feel like you can see like my lashes. It's kind of weird, unless I usually pull down the liner altogether. So to soften the lower lash line, I'm going to go into that mid-tone shade that has the glitter in it, but it's a matte. And I just want to lightly blend everything. Sort of what I did on the lids. Just make sure everything looks seamless. And then to finish off the look, I do want to go back into this topper shade that I used on the lid. I want to put a little bit on the center of my bottom lash line just to really bring out that halo look. I did wet my brush for this because I am using a brush where I would typically use my finger, and I want to make sure I can get it to stick. Should be pretty subtle, but I'm going to jump back in to the lightest shade, see if we can get more of a pop. Alright guys, here's my finished makeup look using the new Patrick Ta Major Dimension eyeshadow palette, and I want to give you my thoughts. First of all, I love the packaging. I think the price is a little bit high, but I have to say after using it, I am blown away by the quality of this palette, and I do believe that this is special. My experience with the creams, they are very pigmented, but you can see you really have to rub in there to get the pigment. They're not too emollient or slippery to where they were all over my eye. They really are a great sort of base for the eyeshadows. If you have an issue and you want to deepen up a halo eye or a smoky eye or whatever it is, these are great because you get that pigment there and then you can kind of pack on the powder shadow on top. I do want to try these out and see how they do as like a smudge liner or anything like that, but my first impression on these were they were easy to work with and really a great base to give me the depth that I needed for a halo eye. The mattes swatch and blend beautifully, very little fallout, creamy but thin formula, super pigmented. I am just really impressed with the mattes, and as I said before, they do appear deeper on the eye than they do in the palette. So if you're looking at this thinking it looks a little bit light for you, They really are pretty deep and smoky and rich on the eyes. On top of the mattes being beautiful and the cream bases just being really something different, but also really workable. I feel like anybody could use them. The topper shades in here are so gorgeous. You saw me apply them. I didn't use them wet and they just went on the lid perfectly. Very little fallout, but really gave me that beautiful sparkle to the eye. I have to say that I'm really impressed with this palette. I thought that I would like it, but I didn't know how I'd feel about these cream bases. And I also didn't know, how I would feel about toppers. Typically toppers can be pretty flaky and hard to work with, but these were not at all. I think this is an innovative product because you do get 4 different finishes in it, so you can really play around with the cream bases or the toppers, metallics, or just the regular mattes. I think the color story is stunning. The only thing I will note is that there is not a black in here, which doesn't bother me, but just keep that in mind. These are very deep though, these deep mattes and the cream bases. And I do think it would have been kind of interesting for him to do maybe like a light beige cream base to really make these pop, but they already do pop, to be honest. Like, you can see them very clearly and they are gorgeous. So I have to say, I know this is a little bit pricey, but I am really wowed by this palette. I just feel like it was really fun to work with, but easy to use. I didn't have any patching, skipping, very minimal fallout. This is really just a beautiful palette. I'm really excited to use it more, so I would definitely recommend this. Now, in terms of the eyeliner, I think it's a nice eyeliner. I don't know if I'm blown away for it in the waterline. I've really been loving my Gucci Beauty one. I like the Marc Jacobs ones or the Nabla, but I do want to play with this a little bit more, see how it blends out to see if it's going to be like great for a smoky wing or something like that. But in the waterline, it's nice. I don't know if I would tell you to run out and get it if you have a bunch of liners. We'll have to keep playing around with this, but for me, the standout is absolutely the eyeshadow palette. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it helped you if maybe you were on the fence. I definitely think you'll be happy with it. I just really am impressed just with those cream bases, the ease of use, and the toppers are gorgeous. The mattes just blend beautifully. I don't really know what else to say other than wow. That's really my feeling about it. So I will link it down below. If you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe. I hope this helped you out. Thank you guys again so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.